A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers, Chandigarh edition. Now, in today's newspaper, Moon is the main theme. Chandrayaan 3 landed successfully, soft landing took place. So, a lot of emphasis on Chandrayaan 3 and the Moon. Okay. Now, here we have to be very objective because we are looking at it from exam point of view. So first thing we should know is, what is the purpose of Chandrayaan 3? What is the purpose of the lander and the rover mission? So lander and rover was basically the payload. So what all things are there in the payload? What all experiments are going to take place? So that is given in the explainer. And that happens to be the last page of this newspaper before the sports one. I have shared the screenshot on the Telegram. But unfortunately, that text is not clean because it was difficult to get that image actually. But you know the heading, you can search it on the net. Okay. Besides this, what is the future for India's space program now? Since Chandrayaan 3 happened, we have successfully landed on the soft landing has taken place on the surface of the moon. So what next? What happens to the space industry? There is an opinion, plus there is an interview of some space scientist regarding this. We will discuss that. Naturally, it also paves way for the opening of the space sector for private sector. We are talking about it, privatization of the space industry, space startups, and collaborations with NASA, Japanese space agency known as JAXA. So all that we will be looking at. Now, besides Chandrayaan 3, there is a missile that is there in news known as Astra, which is a beyond visual range missile, range of 25 to 40 kilometers. Okay, we know that BRICS summit was going on. Prime Minister Modi said that he heartily welcomes the expansion of the BRICS. And besides, he says African Union should become a member of the G20. Okay, talking about Africa, in that context, maybe there is an opinion regarding Africa that it is the time for Africa. Africa has a lot of potential and prospects, so that we will see. This is written by Bharti Mittal, Airtel Group. Okay. Then again, in the opinion section, there is an article concerning an analysis on the law passed by the Rajasthan government, which is the gig workers law. So gig workers, people who work in Uber, etc. So a law has been made for their welfare. So the basic features, etc. we will study. It's very important. The gig economy questions are being asked repeatedly in the last 3-4 years. So it's an important topic. Not to forget, dengue cases are increasing. Please all of you take care. And from mains point of view also, we should cover this. International section, main thing was Russia's Wagner Group, that head was killed in a plane crash. Many people actually anticipated that. Okay. Moving on, in economy section, we have inflation is at high. We all know this, right? So we have a statement from the RBI governor, Mr. Das. Then there is another article concerning welfare spending by the state. So we have some facts and figures concerning GSDP, etc. With reference to the state's funding on welfare schemes. Now, this may be important. You please note down the facts so you can use it for answer writing. You can talk from the point of view of fiscal prudence, right? So important, GS3. Okay, so Chandrayaan 3 landed, first to land near Moon's South Pole. All eyes on rover. ISRO says craft healthy. Okay, so Chandrayaan 3 is the first to land near Moon's South Pole. Nobody has done this. It is on the rear side of the moon, which is not visible. This is significant because, one, the terrain was very difficult. It is ubad-khabad. The terrain was not very good. Besides this, it is expected that there is a possibility of water in this region, plus possibility of various minerals available. So a lot of secrets concerning moon are hidden on the backside of the moon which this Pragyan rover may be able to investigate. Okay. Now you know the name of the rover is Pragyan. So let me bring out. So there is the space launch, this which took place on the rocket. The rocket has a payload. The payload comprises of the lander, the thing that lands, and from the lander will come out the rover. So it is like a robo which moves around and collects samples and sends data to the Earth, to ISRO. Okay, the lander is known as Vikram, named after Vikram Sarabhai, the founder of India's space program. And the rover is named after Pragyan. Pragyan in Sanskrit stands for knowledge. So why is the lander named Vikram? Vikram Sarabhai. And rover because it symbolizes, is the Sanskrit word for wisdom and supreme intelligence. This rover will be active for 1 lunar day or 14 days on Earth. Okay, now you know how much is 1 lunar day, right? 14 days on Earth. This may be because not exposed to the sunlight, battery may not sustain that long, plus the condition is very, very cold. So those may be the factors. Moving on, next mission to moon. So the next mission to moon is not Chandrayaan 4, it is LUPEX, Lunar Polar Exploration. This will be done with the Japanese space agency known as JAXA. Okay. And there will still be the Chandrayaan series. So possibly Chandrayaan 4 would be about sample return mission. So sample from Mars, the samples from moon they would like to collect and bring it back to the Earth. So that should be the logical process going forward. Chandrayaan 2 was about landing. It did not happen. It is now orbiting. Chandrayaan 1 was also orbiting. So Chandrayaan 3 landed and released the rover. The next would be lander and rover, and then it sending it back to the Earth. So that would be important. Okay, so we'll have lots more on the team and all those things. We just skip it. If you want to read, you read, please. Okay, indigenous Astra missile tested from Tejas. So as I told you, the Astra missile is beyond visual range. That is, the pilot can just fire. It is air to air. It is on the air, planes, fighter planes like Tejas, etc. So it will be available with the Air Force and the Navy. Navy also operates with the aircrafts. Okay, the range is 25 kilometers. 25 to 40 kilometers actually, but this is what I have normally studied. Obviously 25 to 40 is not a big gap over there. If let's say a question is asked with the options, so most appropriate would be 25 kilometers. So C.R. Rao dies. He was a statistical scientist, the director of the ISI, Indian Statistical Institute. Next, we have some news concerning agriculture. At 31.93 lakh hectares, Punjab sees highest area under paddy. Okay, so this actually seems like a good news because, if we were concerned about food security with the flooding that took place after the sowing, it was expected that the fields would go bad. So the area under paddy will come down. So this was not good for food security. Okay, so somehow they have been able to retain the highest area under paddy. Okay, but the experts, and rightly so, they are saying this is not a good thing because we want Punjab, which is a semi-arid state, to not get into paddy cultivation because paddy is a water-intensive crop, and the water for flooding basically comes from groundwater or tube wells. So groundwater table is going down, which is not a good thing, right? So we should look at alternative crops for cultivation during the Kharif season. Okay. Kisan unions, corps reach consensus on demands, but dharna to continue. Okay. So this is they were basically protesting farmers with reference to the compensation for flood relief. Plus, they had other demands not mentioned, but I presume it is about MSP, with reference to the MSP, etc. So those concerns are there. Plus, some people may have been arrested, so release of those. So all that. Things that don't look good for the mountains. The landslides continue. Okay. Dengue cases on rise. So we are in Haryana now. Dengue cases on rise. Anil Vij, the minister, reviews preparedness over strict and orders strict monitoring. So the issue of dengue, right? It's a vector-borne disease caused by a mosquito known as Aedes aegypti. Now, what we can look at it from governance point of view, GS2. We can look at it from health point of view, GS3. And so, what is the government doing? Basically, that is the important thing. So these are the three main pointers that I got from the PIB. So one is provide guidelines for prevention and control, case management, etc., community participation, then providing free diagnostic facilities. These are points which center are doing for the states. Then it is saying under National Health Mission, budgetary support should be provided to states. For dengue control activities like dengue case management, vector control activities, which includes domestic breeding checkers, insecticide, fogging machines, provide training and awareness activities. So this I'm just sharing the PIB overall, right? So PIB from Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Landslide, as there is one more website I was doing landslides basically. So I didn't discuss this today, but overall you should know as to what steps are required for, you should keep preparing it. You see the image, okay, what are the reasons for the landslide, plus what steps need to be taken. Just 4-5 points, write it down, because every time you'll come across new points. For answer rating, 4-5 points are good enough. So keep doing that exercise. Next is I'm combining the opinion section with this news. So success with Chandrayaan 3, the lander and rover. So this is an interview. They are saying that it will inspire private space industry to push on innovation. So broadly, the points that are there I'm mentioning. So the Chandrayaan 3 happening successfully, it showcases the credibility of Indian space program, right? So basic point is credibility. That India, if anybody wants to partner with India, they can credibly deliver. So it's credibility. At the same time, ISRO and in the Indian space program is cost effective. It's cost effective and highly reliable. It has highly reliable space grade hardware, right? PSLV, etc. This is highly reliable. We have very good launch program, very less crash ratio, so very reliable. And it is so much so that even NASA, for example, in Chandrayaan 3, even NASA has provided a payload to us to deliver on moon. So NASA trusts us, and they know that it will be cheaper for them to send it to India, the payload, and get it delivered rather than NASA delivering it. Okay. Now, with the Chandrayaan 3, it opens scope for more avenues for exploration. Right? More exploration work would take place. So with the lander and rover, for example, the ISRO was saying that the next Chandrayaan 4, the idea would be to have a sample return mission from moon. We can also say a possibility of looking into the Mars program, or maybe collaborating with other space agencies, for example, Lupix. And collaborations are very good because they are much more cost effective. You save a lot more money because the cost is borne by 2 agencies or 3 agencies. And talking about this one, collaborations with US, we are already a part of their Artemis program, which is concerning the moon, right? They are also going to help us with the Gaganyaan. Gaganyaan is a space program which aims to provide human crew on the space. So in US has the knowledge, they have done this. We will get exposure because of that. And today we are also talking about, when we talk about this space, we are also talking about things like mining on the space, possibility of minerals, or possibility of having a colony on space. So those things may get impetus with this successful launch. And other agencies would like to collaborate with India because of these two factors, credibility and cost effectiveness. Now the idea should be on promoting private sector in the space domain, opening up space for the private sector. So that ISRO is already doing. NASA, you have seen the SpaceX, right? So yeah, so same, we have to do it in India as well. The private sector is more efficient in extracting economic value from anything. Moving on to Article 370, very brief. Arguments are going on with reference to the permanence of Article 370. So here the Chief Justice of India has raised a pertinent point while the arguments were going on. So he says that Article 370 cannot be permanent for one. Where is this 370? Yes. So it cannot be permanent for one. It says temporary provisions with respect to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Secondly, it says Article 371 has a reference of Article 1 itself, Article 1 of the Constitution, that is India, that is Bharat, as a union of states. So there is a reference of Article 1 in Article 370. So by default, it indicates that 370 was always a temporary provision. If they did not intend to do so, they would not have mentioned Article 1. So that is what they're saying. Now the problem with this is that, Article 370 has been changed. It's not possible for me to, but yes, maybe you can see Article 371, point C, the provisions of Article 1 and of this article shall apply in relation to that state. So yes, you can say this. India, that is Bharat, is a union of states which includes the Jammu and Kashmir. Talking about BRICS expansion now. So India had reservations that with the expansion of BRICS, China wants expansion of BRICS so that it can have pro-Chinese countries into BRICS. So this will, reduce the impact India has on BRICS. China will hijack the BRICS. Now, as a surprise move, Indian Prime Minister is saying that they welcome the expansion of the BRICS. The BRICS itself means breaking of barriers, revitalizing economies, inspiring innovation. So it should logically have more members. So they welcome strategic partners. So that means that those who will be bringing in some value to BRICS. Now we know that BRICS is taking place in Johannesburg, South Africa. And here the Prime Minister has made a case for G20, for African Union to get permanent membership to G20. Okay. Coming to the editorial page. So asking for moon and getting it, I'm not doing it. Here, do the moon and forward. So I was reading this article. This is about, obviously, now what? After Chandrayaan 3, what is the future? So basically the author, who's the director of Indian Institute of Astrophysics, she's basically saying that with this Chandrayaan 3, India achieves credibility. India has showcased its reliability in low-cost space launches. So with the trust factor and India's ability to contribute to other nations' space program, including NASA's, there is a possibility of collaborative missions. And space exploration by default is expensive. Plus, it has low value. It's not really providing much value to the people on the Earth. So this will benefit because partnerships will be there. So there'll be more collaborative missions. We already have the Artemis program. We have the NASA ISRO NISAR mission, NISAR. LUPEX is there. So these joint programs will be more economical. Plus our future space programs like Gaganyaan, etc. will get an impetus. Now coming to the next article. This is about the gig workers law. So Rajasthan has passed the gig workers law. Actual name is Rajasthan Gig and Platform Workers Registration and Welfare Act. Okay, so this article is written by the co-founder and member of the New York Taxi Workers Alliance. Fine. Now this is a very important issue, and the issue concerning the gig workers. UPSC has been asking us previously questions on gig workers. So these are work people who take work on the or they take up gigs. Gigs are basically a word for projects. So for example, normally Uber and Ola has been given. So the drivers who work on Uber and Ola, they are basically taking gigs. They are taking projects. They are not employees of Uber and Ola. They bring their car and all. They take the project. That's how it works. Now it is not just restricted to Uber, Ola. Even let's say a teacher, on the ed tech sector, on the coaching sector, that is also an example of gig work or gig economy. So it's spreading like anything. Okay. Now the issue with the gig workers is that now I've mentioned over here, they may be getting low wages. It's a flexible job, by the way, but many a times you don't have an option and you are actually told to join as a partner rather than as an employee. So they like to use the word partners, the people who are hiring. Okay, so these people get low wages. There is a lot of uncertainty actually about the next month's work. So you like for a permanent employee, they are guaranteed, but not them, and no low wages. The companies are resorting to this gig model so that they don't have to meet the statutory or the regulatory obligations. Regulatory obligations like providing for safety nets, providing for good working conditions, and security of tenure. So they engage in hire and fire system. They do not pay for the PF, EPF, insurance. So the financial safety nets, social security nets, and those are not provided. So these are certain concerns with reference to gig workers. And more of people are joining gig, not by their choice, but actually they're forced to join so. Now this law in that regard is a landmark thing because this is the first time somebody is doing it. No other state has done, center has not done it. So state of Rajasthan is doing it. So some of the important features are, it says that every employee, every worker should have a unique ID. Please don't use the word employee because they're not deemed as employees in gig. So every worker or anybody who's taken the gig will have a unique ID. This has to be registered with the government. And based on this, all the government related support, benefits, whatever safety nets are there, these have to be met. Now, there shall be a welfare fund and a welfare board. Now consider a person has taken a Uber ride, right? So you make a payment to the Uber makes a payment to the driver. Now it is saying when the payment is made by the customer, so a tax shall be collected at the transaction level. And part of it this should be contributed to the welfare fund. So money will be used by the government to meet the welfare needs of the people. Okay. And this should be monitored by the welfare board if the companies who are getting into the gig model are fulfilling their obligations or not. So for that, there shall be a welfare board. Furthermore, all these companies, they have their data with their own countries, their privately it is held. Now it is saying that this data should be in a government controlled database. So the government really knows as to who all people are there, how much money is being given. So that transparency is brought in. Fine. So unique ID, welfare fund and welfare board, and government controlled database when it comes to transaction level data. So these are some of the important features, important elements of this act. This is the stepping stone probably for the laws for other states and centers to bring in. So this is something that the center can emulate at a much larger level. A time for Africa. Sunil Bharti Mittal, right? Airtel person. Okay. He had his Airtel was operating from Africa once. Okay. So it's basically making a case that it is the time for Africa. Africa is the sweet spot. India should go into, look into the African market. China is already deeply invested in Africa. US has been looking into it. So what are the benefits or comparative advantages of Africa? Let us see. Africa has 30% of global, please, these are important from IR point of view. 30% of mineral reserves, 12% of world's oil, and 8% of natural gas. So it's a dream for any industrialized nation. When looking for energy security, mines and minerals, everything is available over here. Plus, it is a great market. These words are mine words, okay? Half of the world's projected population will be from Africa. So 2050, half of the world's projected population growth. So 2050, significant amount of population is there. So it's a good market. Further, with all these labor force that is available, it is having an enviable demographic dividend, which can be used by these companies, MNCs, etc., to set up their manufacturing bases because they get low cost labor. So yes, plus Africa can provide for food security. 70% of African workforce is in agriculture. By the way, India is also something like this only. So 60-70% is in agriculture. So yes. So we should look for easier intra-continental trade, policy harmonization, and harnessing natural endowments in renewable energy. Further, digital and physical connectivities should be promoted. And again, here India can play a pivotal role. Right? China is already doing it. We should also do it. Okay, so these are the main points basically with reference to Africa. You quote this day in, day out. When it comes with reference to Africa, you will always remember these facts. Coming to the international section, Wagner boss, the Wagner group, which revolted against Putin, is dead. So Russian jet crash, he died in that. New Biden loan plan for students to cut payments for millions. Okay. So there is this program known as saving on a valuable education. So, this is with reference to students take loans for higher education, funding their higher education. So this is a very long tenure loan, plus lot of interest is charged on this. So students end up paying lots and lots of money to the people who have sponsored their education. So they're saying that the tenure may be increased and interest rate should come down under this SAVE. So that is the program of President Biden. Next is this one port project known as Chanque Port, which is in Peru. So this port in Peru is in South America. So this is there in the news, and this port will be the gateway from South America to Asia. China has been helping in building this port. So let's look on the atlas now. Where is Peru? So you can see Peru, Ecuador. So this is on the western side of South America. So it's the East Pacific Ocean basically, or the west of this thing. Lima is the capital, right? So basic features you must know. Andes Mountains pass through it. One more. Japan sets target in spending on green transformation. That is, they want to move towards green. And for this, they have set a target of $14 billion or 2 trillion yen. What will this money be used for? This money will be used for promoting local production of storage batteries. For renewables, electricity has to be stored. For that, batteries are required. semiconductors, and equipments to produce hydrogen, amongst others. So instead of batteries, we can also use hydrogen from renewables. Electricity can be generated, which can be used to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. This hydrogen can in turn be used as a fuel cell. When we use it as a fuel cell, we call it as cold combustion. When we burn it like petrol, diesel, then it was known as hot combustion. Okay, so that can be done. This is seen as an alternative to battery. We already have fuel cell based cars built by Toyota. And they're saying that they will be carbon neutral by 2050. Now, obviously, the question emerges, when will India be carbon neutral? So India will be carbon neutral by 2070. So that is what India committed in the Glasgow Summit, COP26. COP26 is part of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Next is, this one is important, G20 Jaipur meet, India to seek revival of WTO dispute resolution mechanism. So first of all, we should know what is the WTO resolution mechanism, then what are the issues and how it will be revived. So 1 second. Yes. So these things are now easily available on the net. So WTO is the main body which provides for coordination in the global trade, and the global trade takes place in accordance with the laws and the agreements happening in the WTO. Now, let's say a country is seen to be flouting those rules, right? So another party can go to the WTO dispute resolution body. For example, India has a solar mission, national solar mission. India wants to make solar cells, and for that it wants to give subsidies to promote manufacturing, domestic manufacturing. USA has a problem because they are saying that it is an unfair trade practice because giving subsidy to Indian manufacturers would create disincentive for US-based companies. So they went to the WTO dispute resolution mechanism. Likewise, we can say if India, let's say, imposes higher tax on Harley Davidson motorcycle, so which is against the WTO norms, so the US can take India to the WTO dispute resolution mechanism. So there is a dispute settlement body. There is a ministerial conference where meetings, discussions take place. There is a dispute settlement body where somebody has a problem, they raise it. Then it goes to a panel which looks into the issue and issues its findings. Right. Now, let's say if somebody has a problem, let's say I'm talking about the solar mission, and the verdict was not in India's favor, then they can appeal it at the appellate body. Right. So that is the dispute settlement framework. Now, what is the issue with it? The membership of this body, appellate body, this problem is with the appellate body. It was supposed to have 7 members, but now it has been reduced to 3 members. And US is saying that this WTO is not favorable to them. So they are saying that we will not send a representative to the appellate body. So now we only have 1 member since December 2019. So there is 1 member. And for working of the appellate body, we need 3 people. So somebody has a problem, they go to the appellate body, but appellate body does not have a member. So this thing remains stuck. So that is the issue. So here at the G20 Summit, Mr. Piyush Goyal, the Minister for Commerce, he's saying that we need to revive this system. This is faulty. This needs to be revived. Okay. And this should be revived, and the dispute resolution should go in place. It should take place in the order of common but differentiated responsibility. Given that, let's say, countries like US, etc., are at a higher stage of development, they have a comparative advantage, while India and other Africa and other nations, African countries, they are less developed, so they should be given a preferential treatment. So it should be based on common but differentiated responsibility. And the new system should be consensus based. That is not majority based, but consensus based. That is, all members are in consensus, all members are in agreement. Okay, so that is one issue, dispute resolution mechanism. Besides, India is also saying that we need overall reforms in the WTO. Now, reforms in WTO, we can talk about reforms in UN, reforms in what else? A lot of things are there. IMF, World Bank institutions. So India is always talking about it. These are always important for GS2. It has an element of commerce, economy, but it will come under GS2. You can see the past years. Okay, moving on. High inflation still a challenge, says the RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das. So the inflation target was 4% plus minus 2%. Now, according to the recent data, CPI, retail inflation or CPI, is at 7.44%, well above the 6% limit. 4 plus 2% is 6%. Okay. Now he's saying that basically that inflation is coming from food items, which has seen doubling of inflation. If we look at the core inflation, if we remove the volatile issues, then the inflation is more or less, it has softened. That is what it is saying. And it is still at 4.9%, which is on the higher side. Okay. In fact, what is worrying is that if you look at the graph, in absolute terms, things are very, very expensive. So if you look at, let's say, the inflation at 6%, 7%, then it is at 4%. Overall, inflation is still high. You're getting my point? The inflation is still high. Even if it goes lower than this, it will still be higher. The prices are really, really, really high. So it's basically data play, but still the prices are extremely high. Okay, next, social welfare spending of 11 states to hit 10-year high at 4 lakh crores. I have summarized these points over here. So, social welfare spending, and this does not include education, agriculture, and public health. So, outside of these core sectors, the social welfare spending is 1.7% of gross state domestic state product, and this is at 4 lakh crores, right? Yearly, 4 lakh crores. Now, between 2018 to 2024, it has been growing at 16% compounded annually growth rate. So every year it is growing at 16%. It is increasing at a very, very high rate. And this does not include education, agriculture, and public health. Very, very important sectors. Here, funding is not increasing. Other areas it is increasing. Now you can imagine they are basically talking about subsidy spend, subsidies, etc. So those are basically. So this is not good, and the CRISIL is saying, this credit rating agency, they are saying that it is basically during the election years, election commitments, the promises on freebies that they give, more and more money is spent on this. Now, what is the issue? Now you see the issue is the important sectors, welfare sectors like education, public health is not getting additional money. Right, it is still at what, 1% of the GDP. This is around 1.5-2% of the GDP, which is remain very low. It has to be doubled at least. Money is not going here, but going elsewhere in subsidies, etc. Besides, all this money, where is it coming from? By borrowing. It is leading to fiscal deficit. You're borrowing, you're taking loans, you have to pay back to the banking system. So it is creating more and more debt obligations on the government. Rather, when you borrow money, it's logical, like me and you also, when you borrow money, it should be invested in assets, or it should lead to capital formation, which increases the productivity of the economy. For example, borrow money to create a plant which creates more revenue to the government or anybody. So that is not happening. So it reduces the scope for capital formation in development of infrastructure. So all that scope goes less. Okay. Now coming to the last part of this newspaper. So one is ISRO Arc to Future, Aryabhatta to Chandrayaan 3. So all these are mentioned one by one over here. Aryabhatta was the first space satellite. It was named after the Indian astronomer, obviously Aryabhatta. Now we should know about Aryabhatta, right? We should read more about Aryabhatta. So he wrote his work known as Aryabhattiya. And he also wrote works like Arya Siddhant. Now, besides this, there were other people also, particularly from the Gupta area, right? So we should know about their works. For example, Surya Siddhant. So that is there. Lata Dev. It is written by Lata Dev. So, like these works, you should know more because these can be easily asked in your prelims. So UPSC may not ask you about our work of Aryabhatta, but some other mathematician, those works can be asked. Okay, so first mission in 2008, Chandrayaan 1, they crash landed on purpose payload, which provides data. Then Chandrayaan 2 was there, and then we have the Chandrayaan 3. Okay, now the important one is this article, Missions Scientific Objectives. So I have highlighted all of them, right? It was difficult to share because you look at the length of this article, right? It's difficult to take a clear screenshot. But this article is important. I want you to read. It tells us about the things in the payload of Chandrayaan 3. It includes Rambha, which is radio anatomy of moon-bound hypersensitive ionosphere and atmosphere. It will study electrons and ions near surface of moon. Then it has Chaste, which is Chandramoon surface thermophysical experiment. It will study thermal properties of the lunar surface. Then there is ILSA, which is instrument for lunar seismic activities. So seismic activities on the moon. Laser retro reflector array. This is provided by NASA. It's a payload provided by NASA. It will create a target on the surface of the moon from where laser can be hit. So we'll get more accurate information. And it will help future space missions to moon. Then laser-induced big breakdown spectroscopy for chemical and mineral composition of the lunar surface. Then alpha particle X-ray spectrometer. So the composition of magnesium, calcium, etc., lunar soils and rocks to identify the minerals available in those soil and rocks. Further, it is working on the discovery of water. It's expected that on the rear side of the moon, or the side where the Chandrayaan 3 has landed, the Vikram has landed, so there water is available, so try to investigate that. Okay, so a lot of things are there actually, so I want you to read yourself. You know the title, you can just Google it, you'll get it. So